Hi guys, thanks for checking the video out. Steve Buzza here, and today's video is on the pros and cons of the 64-degree wedge. So you'll see there's quite a few tour pros carrying 64-degree wedges, or certainly when they get into different conditions, you know, like for a certain event, they will add the 64-degree. If you saw Gary Woodland's chip off the 17th green on the 71st hole of the US Open, one of the most iconic shots of the year, he used a 64-degree wedge, but there are some downsides to carrying one. So without further ado, let's start talking. Let's start with the pros. Let's start with the good stuff. First of all, the obvious one, the 64-degree wedge is going to allow you to hit it higher. So by able to hit higher shots, you'll be able to stop the ball easier. So if you're short-sided, the extra loft is going to make it easier for you to hit good shots. So you don't get simpler than that. So the first pro, extra loft, extra height, extra stop. The second one is I get a lot of people come to me and I'm watching them and they struggle with like 30, 40, 50 yard shots. And that's where you should be quite effective. You know, if you're the person that likes to lay it back considerably, you know, you like to lay it up at 100, 110, it's harder from 110 than it is from 30. So like, imagine if you were just going to throw it, you would obviously want to be as close as possible. The 64-degree wedge really helps the person that has a swing that puts too much power into those small swings. You know, that's what I tend to see as the main cause of struggling from that distance. The extra loft means you can just make a bigger swing, you know, so you can end up being more effective from that short range shot. So it can fill in a gap. So if you're someone that really struggles with little half shots, you know, again, the 64-degree can be of great benefit. The third and last pro of the 64-degree wedge I'm going to talk about today is by adding the additional wedge, you can optimize your bounce options. So you might have no bounce on the 64 degrees. So when you've got a really tight lie, you can use the 64. But it might give you the option of your other wedges to put lots of bounce on. So if you're in thick rough, or like when you're in a bunker with like heavy sand, you know, it gives you variety in actually what the lies you're going to see on the course. So the extra wedge gives you the ability to spread your bounces. So you've actually got more options, not just in the loft, but in how the clubs are going to want to interact with the ground. So I've talked through the pros. What are the cons? And some of the cons are actually very much related to some of the pros. So the big one is with the extra loft, you have to hit it very hard, and it's hard to transfer energy into a club with lots of loft. So if you imagine hitting a driver, because it's a straighter face, it's easier to put energy into that ball. As you add loft, that energy transfer starts to decline. By the time you get to a 64-degree, you might end up in a situation where even when you make a pretty good movement, you don't transfer any energy in, so the distances that you hit become really variable. So like I said, they're good to use from 40, 50 yards, but you might get a case where sometimes it goes 50 yards and then all of a sudden the distance drops considerably. So that's because having lots and lots of loft actually makes it hard to transfer energy. Con number 2 is if you've added an extra wedge, you've had to remove a club. And the 64-degree might be a club that's nice to have, but your actual need for it might be very few times in a round. So what can happen is you've removed, especially if you're a player that maybe doesn't hit the ball that far, or you hit it kind of an average different distance for a club player, you've had to remove a hybrid, or you've had to remove something from the top of the set, which leaves you vulnerable up there. So yes, it gives you an option, but it takes an option away, and it might take an option away that you would actually find you'll use more, and it'll actually have a bigger effect on your scoring potential. And the third and final one I'm going to speak about today is more options mean more decisions. So you add the 64-degree, and then you get in situations where you're not sure if you should use your 64, or you should use your lob wedge, or you should use your sand wedge. You know, it can add to the confusion. Carrying lots of wedges is great if you have time to practice with them so you can see what they are able to create. If you don't have the time to practice, sometimes having less options can actually give you more clarity on the golf course. The player that has clarity, I promise you, they shoot better scores than the guy that's got more options or might be technically better, but where clarity lies in one player, that player has a little bit of confusion. Confusion is a good way to ruin your day, and it will certainly ruin your score. So sometimes less options actually allows you to commit your shots better. So yes, there's more options in the 64, but unfortunately it might just add into the pot, and under pressure you might not know what to do. So 64, there are some pros, there are some cons. Lots and lots of golf shops, like your local pro, he might have some demo wedges. You know, I'm all for you trying it, but don't think of the 64 as a magic wand. Gary Woodland has improved his short game immensely the last few years, but it's through practice. It's not just by adding a new club. So the club helps, but the practice is going to be what's getting there. If you don't have time to practice, this thing might become a burden. So thanks for watching. Get some comments down below. Are you somebody that has a 64 degree? Maybe he's had one for a few years and it has been really helpful. I'd love to hear what you've got to say. I think there'll be lots of people watching this video thinking about getting one. If you could get your experiences into the comments, that would be fantastic. As always, thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and I hope to catch you soon.